not necessarily a meeting of the school board, but it's a meeting of the electorate. That's all you folks. So hopefully you had a chance to sign the sheet that was going around the room. If you haven't, please do so. Certainly for school district residents, it's the folks we would love to have sign that up there. So shortly here, I will call the meeting to order. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll elect a meeting chair. And then we've got an agenda that we can follow that you all can see. We'll have it up on the screen here or whatever. Basically, it's going to be a district overview and then a financial recapitulation, maybe. How's that if you're a 50 center to start your school year? And then at the close of business of our annual meeting, we'll reconvene or recall to order a shorter meeting of the school board. We've got some cursory business items that we'll take care of then. So, having said, one other piece of a request, I guess, if you will. Because it's a meeting of the electorate, there is no public comment, but you are certainly all encouraged to interact with us. You can ask questions, you can get answers, hopefully, on some things as we present them. But I'm going to ask that if you do so, to please come up to our podium here where our laptop is open, as if you were doing public comment, so that we can capture your audio for folks that are listening to us remotely. So with that piece in mind, I'll just remind you, if you're going to comment, to please come up and do so at the podium. Carrie?
And you also have to state your name.
I'm sorry?
State your name and address.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you do so, please tell us who you are. You state your name and your address in the district. So, having said that, I will call to order the annual meeting of the School District of Milton. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, having accomplished that, we can elect a meeting chairperson.
I nominate Joe Martin to be the meeting chair.
I'll second that. Thank you, I will accept. Are there any other nominations? Second call. Third and final.
I'll make a motion to elect Joe Martin, meeting chair.
Second.
Thank you. That motion was by Rick, seconded by Tracy, to elect Joe Martin, myself, as meeting chair. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? When we vote on any of the motions that come before us in the course of business, you all can vote. That's the other subtle difference from standard board procedure, just so folks are aware. All right, having done that, we have an agenda that we need to approve before we can wade into it.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. That motion was from Tracy and seconded by Rick to approve our agenda. Are there any questions on it? Everyone in favor of approval, please signify with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We have an agenda. Okay, new business, as I mentioned, has a couple different pieces to it. We are going to start with our superintendent, Rich Dahman, and what is titled a bit of a district overview.
And we'll be following along with the slides that are in the board docs and will be on the screen. So Carly, you can go ahead and go to that next slide as the end of the agenda. And I'm going to share some information on district overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Business Services, Ross McFarland, who is going to share some of the financial pieces and then get into the budget hearing portion. So a little bit of information about our school district. You can see on the slide that the population across the district, this isn't just school age population, but all residents in our school district, a shade over 19,000 people, about 7,200 households. The area of our school district is about 120 square miles. In 2022, our equalized tax base was just shy of $2.7 billion. So that's the tax base for residents, businesses, and agricultural land across the school district. We have 9 different municipalities. Most of them are located in Rock County, but also a portion of our school district is in Jefferson County. And in just a second, we'll talk a little bit about those 9 municipalities. And for 4K through 12th grade, our enrollment is expected to be right around 3,400 students. As you know, tomorrow's our first day of school, so we're excited to have our students back. And then in a couple of weeks, we do our 3rd Friday in September count where our official enrollment is finalized. So just some information there about our district. And then, as I mentioned, we have 9 different municipalities. And you can see those 9 that are listed on this slide. They are listed there along with the percent of the property value in each of those municipalities. You can see the city of Janesville and the city of Milton make up 2 municipalities that make up the largest portion of our property value, but the town of Harmony, towns of Milton, Janesville, Fulton, Johnstown, Koshkonong, and Lyman are all a part of our school district. On the next slide, it has some trend information about our tax base each fall, going back over a period of years. And then that's the slide on the left. And the slide on the right is our total levy and our mill rate. So you can see there some of our trend data through last year. And one thing I want to point out, you can see that the line graph on the right is the mill rate. You can see that in the 2018-19 year, it had reached a low point. It increased with the passing of the capital referendum that allowed us to add on to our facilities and upgrade our facilities. And then you can see each year since then that mill rate has gone down every year. And we have a couple slides that show the comparison with some of our neighboring and conference districts. So on slide number 9, you can see the Rock County school districts. Our mill rate from last year of $8.11, and where that compares to other Rock County school districts. And then on the following slide, we often look at our Badger Conference school districts as comparables. And again, there our mill rate from 2022 of $8.11, and where that stands compared to other school districts. In that comparison, you see that we have a very competitive mill rate with other districts. We always look to balance providing a high quality education and opportunities for our students with being fiscally responsible. And I think that we, over the years, done both of those things extremely well as a school district. One of the things that we work with to lead our work in all of our schools and departments is our strategic plan. So you can see in our strategic plan, both our vision and mission statements are grounded in opportunities, achievement, and community for all. You can see the 5 different pillars in our strategic plan: teaching and learning, relationships, climate and culture, high quality staff, community engagement, and operations and facilities. Over the past year, the board set a goal and focus areas in each of those 5 pillars or strategic objectives. So we continue to look at the progress that we're making toward those goals. Recently, we gave an update to the board on the work that we've done in each of those goals, and we'll continue to do that throughout the year. Another item that's somewhat new in our school district is our graduate profile, Portrait of a Red Hawk. And this was a process that took place about a year ago, and it was a multi-month effort that included the committee that was composed of staff members, community members, administrators, and the committee landed on and the board approved a graduate profile that really focuses on what do we want a graduate from the school district of Milton to look like? What attributes do we want them to have? And the 5 main areas are a collaborator, self-manager, problem solver, communicator, and community builder. All of those things are important. We got some great feedback through surveys from parents and community members and also local businesses to complete that information. Then there's a few slides that highlight some student and staff highlights from throughout the year. The first slide, I want to share a few things from the pictures there. On this one, the north side, Girls on the Run bake sale is highlighted. The Milton Future Farmers of America FFA students, and I want to recognize a few students there: Seth Haldeman, Emma McNally, and Cole Cudma. They received their American degree, which is the highest possible degree for FFA members, and less than 1% across the country achieved that. So it was very impressive for our FFA to have 3 students achieve that. We have our Milton High School building trades students did some preservation work at the Milton House, which is our local national landmark and historical treasure. So thank you to our building trades students for that work. Milton High School band did a phenomenal job every year, and their marching program, Dark Circus, last year was outstanding. You got a chance to see that. Our swim teams held their first dive-in movie at the Leader Family Pool. It was very well attended. And we also were able to go back to our MHS preschool, where our careers in education students welcomed future Red Hawks to Milton High School. On the next slide, a couple of things I want to highlight. The Milton Middle School Immunity Team donates blankets to Patty's Paws Rescue, and had a visit from Rex, who's a local canine celebrity. Milton Middle School Avid students are highlighted here. They do a cereal box drive every year. They brought in 723 boxes of cereal from the Milton Food Pantry. The robotics team competed at the 5th annual Wisconsin Valley tournament. On the next slide, 13 Red Hawks were recognized at the annual Southern Lakes Anthology ceremony at UW Whitewater for their creative works. 6th grade Red Hawk Fiona P. was selected to read her work aloud to the State Assembly. So congratulations to Fiona. Milton Middle School Web Leaders raised funds for Project 1649, and the organization that donates beds to children without beds. So thank you to them for their work. Some of the things that are highlighted on that slide. And then on the next slide, at the high school, the Future Business Leaders of America competed at nationals. Cooper Prof finished 4th place nationally in his category. It's the highest showing that any of our students have ever had, so congratulations to Cooper. Milton Middle School World Languages educator, Francis Castro, was selected for UW Whitewater's Early Career Educator Award, so congratulations to Francis. There's a picture from our Discovering Democracy trip to Washington, D.C., and Milton West students collaborating on the Traveling Mural Project with schools across the country. And then on the final slide, we highlight some of our state participants in our athletic teams. In girls golf, Hannah Dunk and Bethany Bidder qualified for the state tournament. In boys swimming, Gavin Bartles. We had 6 different wrestlers qualified for the state tournament: Maddie Peach, Aiden Slama, Matt Haldeman, Tyson Peach, Royce Nillo, and Aiden Sinclair. And Aiden Sinclair was state champion. Hannah Dunk, in addition to golf, qualified for state in gymnastics and the floor exercise. And the boys golf team finished 6th place in the state, and 3 state qualifiers for boys tennis and 2 state qualifiers for track. So a lot of great things happened over the past year among our students and staff. We're very proud of the work that happens every day in all of our classrooms and throughout all of our extracurricular activities. Any questions or thoughts from board members on that portion before we turn things over to Director McPherson for the financial report? If not, we'll call Ross up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ross McPherson, and I recently joined the district as the Director of Business Services. And tonight my goal is twofold. First, I want to summarize how the 22-23 school year ended, or is very yearly ended based on our most recent audit, and give a preview of our 23-24 budget for this coming fall. And the last thing we're going to be doing this evening is reviewing the proposed tax levy for approval this evening. To start, I want to identify the current fund balance projections for the 22-23 year ending for June 30th, 2023. At the beginning of this year, we had a fund balance of $13.519 million. We took receipt of $65,477,000 and total disbursements of $63.376 million, leaving our total fund equity across all funds just over $15.619 million. In the general fund, our projected balance is $11.043 million. This ends up being just below 24% and furthers our goal to minimize the need for short-term borrowing during the upcoming fiscal year. The Special Projects Fund represents balance and accounts for donations and student activity accounts. The Debt Service Fund balance represents funds committed for fall debt payments. The Capital Project Fund represents funds committed for future capital maintenance based on our long-range facility funding. The Food Service Fund represents funding committed to school nutrition activities and programming. And finally, the Community Services Fund represents funding committed for operation and maintenance of our community park spaces. Our outstanding debt ending June 30, 2023 is as follows. After payments made during the fiscal year, our current balance as of 6/30/2023 is $47,275,000. This is only comprised of the referendum debt incurred in 2019 and payments to date. And finally, the Employee Benefit Trust Fund, also known as Fund 73, is held for future commitments by the School District of Milton to advance our retirement benefit liability to staff. The school district changed its benefit structure last spring, and the receipts in this fund during the 22-23 school year reflect the advanced funding of those staff that would receive 403B years of service credit for years prior to that change. As required for reporting in Fund 73, we are also highlighting that the Employee Benefit Trust Fund also gained $66,514.30 of interest during the year. Moving then into our budgetary information for 23-24, let's briefly discuss the ways our budgets are required to be formatted and presented as part of state statutes. Wisconsin uses the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirements, also known as WFR, to code and format all financial data for the school district. These guidelines use a chart of accounts format that our local account code structure must adhere to. This is used by all Wisconsin school districts. The long-form version of these accounts uses a set of dimensions, including fund, source, object, and function. The publication data used for the annual meeting presentation summarizes these dimensions by fund. Each fund in the WFR format has a specific purpose and set regulations that must be followed during implementation. The district budget plan of how we propose to use our resources to accomplish our educational and operational plan activities each year. It is a plan, excuse me. Our budget represents a plan at a point in time. We present this data to the board multiple times throughout the year. In June, this board gave preliminary approval of the 23-24 budget, which precedes this annual meeting. The district cannot set its final original budget until the end of October, which requires reporting of our third Friday count and final information from the state regarding distributions and grant payments. To conduct the annual meeting, we must estimate what these final values will be based on our available information. These estimates are reflected in our budget by identifying our sources or revenues and purposes and uses or expenditures. The next several slides will outline the proposed budgets by fund. This information is also available in the financial supplement prepared for this meeting. At the end of these fund budget statements will be a preview of our proposed tax levy by fund. Okay. So for our general fund, also known as Fund 10, on this slide, I want to note that most of our revenue sources are identified as coming from our local tax levy and state general aid resources. Those sources marked inter-district resources identify what we receive as part of our students' open enrollment into an open school district. State sources include our general aid payments from the state of Wisconsin, as well as our per pupil categorical rate. The one thing that has a pretty significant difference in this year's budget is a significant reduction in federal resources. This is due primarily due to the use and elimination of one-time stimulus funds under COVID relief, or also known as ESSER funds. Finally, the total general fund revenues are set to decrease close to 3% overall. On this graph, I wanted to show a very brief depiction of what our total revenue makeup looks like in Fund 10. Approximately 59% come from state resources or general aid, and local resources comprise the other major majority portion of this budget at 32%. On our expenditure side, the way this is broken up in the publication format is by broad areas of function dimension in the WOOP reporting system. The 100,000 series is all of our instructional activities, including curricular staff and co-curricular activities. The 200,000 set is for all support services, including student services staff, library, transportation, custodial, utilities, supervision, business services, and administration. The 400,000 series is all non-program transactions, including our outsourcing of sub-placement, interfund transfers to other funds, and open enrollment payments out to other districts, as well as private school voucher payments. As another depiction of the Fund 10 expenses, on the left side is a pie chart identifying the major sources of expenses in this fund. 48.6% is comprised of salary and wages, 22.2% benefits, about 23.6% purchase services. The smallest slice, identified as other on this, is broken up into a larger piece to the right, showing that of that 3.2%, it comprises very small amounts of the budget, including district-wide insurance, debt service payments due to leases, dues and fees, and capital equipment purchases. Fund 20 series includes our Special Projects Fund, also known as our Donation Fund, Fund 21, and our Special Education Fund, Fund 27. The Special Projects Fund, Fund 21, is used to record one-time sources of revenue and expense for specific activities. These funds are maintained with balances for each activity and restricted for those purposes. The Special Education Fund records most of the annual activity for our student services team, staff, and budgetary needs. This fund cannot have a fund balance and is supplemented by the general fund each year through an interfund transfer. For Fund 27, I just wanted to highlight here that most of these expenses are staff related, and it's close to 90% overall. In the Fund 30 series is our debt service. At present, we only have one debt issuance, which is in our Fund 39 referendum approved debt structure. In here, we have the updated debt payment for the 2019 referendum. Activity in this one in recent years includes payment on our debt schedule and planned prepayment or defeasance of debt in the 22-23 and proposed 23-24 school year. The Fund 40 series includes two funds in most recent years, but going forward we'll only have one. The capital project funds are used to create all major capital outlays for buildings and ground infrastructure. Two funds are represented here, Fund 46 for future capital maintenance and Fund 49 for referendum expenditures. At the end of the 22-23 school year, we concluded the last of the referendum construction, so Fund 49 will have no balance and no activity effective July 1st of this year. The Fund 50 series includes all activity for our food service programming, and the federal, one issue of note here is the change in revenue streams for the food service program has had dramatic changes over the last 2 years. While we were under COVID restrictions, we had what was called a seamless summer option available for our food service programming, which provided free meals to all students throughout our programming. That ended at the end of the 21-22 school year. And at the beginning of last school year, we were back into the free and reduced process for applications. And going forward, we are in the same for 23-24. The fund balance in this fund is also restricted to food service programming. And based on the federal stimulus that came in the last couple of years, will be used over time to invest in new equipment and offset any projected revenue shortfalls due to the ending of this federal stimulus. Fund 80 tracks our community service activities. This is primarily composed of our Milton recreation programming, including our maintenance of Shilberg Park and Central Park activities. And just as a final capture of all of the funds included here tonight, one major point to highlight here is that the total net expenditures from all funds for the last 2 years has decreased quite a bit. There's a story going on here though that bears repeating, is that the main reason, there's 3 main reasons this is going down. One is the ending of federal stimulus money that is no longer accessible to us. One is the conclusion of all of our capital maintenance referendum activities that we did in the last year. And finally, the last several state budgets have provided less and less resources for public education. And that is reflected in the fact that from 21-22 to 22-23, our total expenditures decreased 4.5%. And our total budget for next year proposed to decrease almost 7%. The last slide for this evening is the proposed tax levy for this coming year. For the 21-22 and 22-23 school years, these are the approved tax levies from the fall budgets of those respective years. For the 23-24 school year, the proposed budget is $22,514,788. This represents an increase in the total tax levy by approximately 3%.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McPherson? Thank you, Ross.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have one. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Tracy.
So on slide 36, you're stating that the expenditures went down due to the decrease in the budget. So you're saying that there was a fully balanced budget in all 3 of these years, and we didn't have to eat away at our fund balance at all.
I'm trying to get back to the slide.
Sorry.
There we go. Can you repeat your question?
Because you described the decrease in expenditures based on the decrease in revenue.
Well, yes, correct. So the last 2 years' activities and expenditures showing a decrease. I'm saying that our proposed budget for next year is proposed to be about 7% below last year's actual amounts.
Sorry, so when you presented this one, you
Yes.
said that the decrease in 4% and then 7%, the decrease in expenditures was due to a decrease in revenue,
Yes, based on the fact that there was balanced budget for both of those years.
where we didn't have to address and go into the fund balance in any prior years to accommodate the operating.
Not in the last 2 years.
I think we discussed this in the finance committee, and Tracy Graham put a point in, and I think we owe a debt of gratitude to the administration and the team that put together the budget the last several years. Certainly there were some challenging times. The focus of this board and administration was we got to find a way to try to present a balanced budget, and we were successful in doing that. As we look at the upcoming budget, it's a product of a lot of things, and the recent biennial budget passed in the state really dictates where we're at and what we have the ability to do. I'm proud that we're able to present a balanced budget tonight, but my concern is as we look long term, we can't shrink our way to being a successful district. At the end of the day, at some point we have to find a mechanism to not shrink our way to success, but find a balance to success. And so I think what we're presenting here tonight, I'm proud to say that what's being proposed is a balanced budget, but I recognize that the path we're on isn't sustainable. We can't continue to cut our way to student success or better grades or more activities for students or better outcomes. And so while I feel good about what we have here tonight, like I said, it's a point of time, not a long-term trajectory that we can keep going with. And like I said, we discussed it at length in the finance committee, and I think that there's other members of that committee here tonight. I think they have an opportunity to chime in, but that was really the takeaway. We're proud to present a budget that's balanced. We're concerned long-term. Where does this support next year or the year after? Find a way to do the same thing in a way that maintains education that we expect.
So I see that on the general fund. What is your input on the debt service? What is your feedback there?
So Ross, and again, I'm only speaking for myself here. Ross talked about the needs, and one of the things that I think really carried weight for me as a discussion point in the finance committee was what we're discussing tonight is the proposed budget, but we really won't be able to vote on an actual budget until October. The third Friday count, some of the things that are being related with them. The revenue limit is based on some parameters that all 30 other districts are facing right now. are waiting for resolution. So long term, as we talk about sustainability, the last defeasance that we did save Ross or correct me, Rich, correct me if needed here. Long term, it saves about $1 million in interest. And so presenting ourselves with the opportunity to do that again is what we're doing tonight. And at the end of the day, come October, we'll have the eventual vote to decide if we actually do that, which I think, again, really speaking for myself, is going to be very dependent on these other factors that I mentioned. What is the outcome of them, and then what that results in will dictate what the right outcome of that is. But again, speaking for myself, presenting the opportunity, for lack of other information that needs to be presented yet, the opportunity to make that savings again long-term district is what prompted me to support this. Is that we're just simply setting the table that we could do this, and if we do, we'll save a significant amount of interest. And in October, we'll actually come back and decide if we proceed with that.
Not to quell anyone's discussion points, but you jumped ahead just a little bit. We're going to do a budget hearing, and we can certainly talk about the pieces of that. Does anyone have any comments relative to what Ross has gone through so far, which is sort of a look back of financial performance? Go ahead, Heather. Ross, if you want to cede the podium there.
You can see right there too. Heather Moore, 7739 North Chicago Trail, Edgerton. I'm in according to the map, far northwest corner. If you go past my backyard, I'm Edgerton. So, question for you. On the community service fund, if I'm not mistaken, that includes the Parks and Rec department through the schools.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so why is it showing that each year, in the audited and then in the unaudited, we're showing the revenues and other financing sources decreasing by, in 21-22 by close to 250,000, give or take. And then we're decreasing again by close to another 100,000. However, this administration just did the increases for the youth facility usage, which would be directly impacting. So why is none of that being taken into consideration as we're going forward in this budgeting process?
I can speak to it briefly. My understanding, that we're not here, for a good portion of that is that there were one-time projects done in previous years where we allowed to amend the levy. Correct me if I'm wrong, in regards to Central Park, most recently, once those renovations were done, we pulled the levy back in a year. In this last budgetary cycle, where we had reductions due to planned city budget shortfalls, we took a reduction in all of it.
But you did the increase, but you're not reflecting that in here.
That's with the increase, actually. So the reduction in planned revenue sources and the decrease in expenses are all baked in.
Okay, so is that broken down further than in
Not a
here?
point.
Okay, will you be able to present that, or is that gonna be in the audit that is coming out in October?
It'll be part of the audit.
Okay.
As far as additional information, this is the only presentation.
Okay, and then hypothetically, if we didn't have a failed referendum, how much of a levy would be being increased now with the levy limit, or the low revenue limits being increased in this past budget?
I don't want to speak to hypotheticals right now because we don't have any action or information on that. You are correct, that is a situation we're monitoring right now at the state level. Were that to happen, we may revisit existing assumptions within the general fund budget to address what that would be. Our goal would not be to simply take the authority under that structure and add it to what we do. We'd have to revisit the entire thing to gauge the tax impact and mitigate that before we do a fall.
Okay, and final question, DPI does still have federal dollars. Is DPI putting out anything towards the school district or other districts on any of further one-time federal dollars that could potentially impact this?
Other than pockets of competitive grants, nothing on the type of cases.
Great.
Does anyone else have questions for Ross? Like I said, sort of retrospective of financial performance to date. Otherwise, Ross's next piece of the agenda is the budget hearing, and I think you'll touch on some of the discussion that we might have already opened the door on. So, go ahead, Ross.
Well, this is just a revisiting of the agenda for this evening. We've gone through items A, B, and C at this point, and we're going to be moving on to item D, which is identifying the levy for the upcoming school year. And with that, we have a proposed levy in the annual meeting supplement and the information we just discussed, proposing a tax levy of $14,166,420. Excuse me, $14,166,420.
So we supposed to ask questions on that, or what?
Question, or if we have a proposed motion on the floor based on information we just went through.
Well, I'll throw it out there, and we certainly can discuss it in just a second anyway, but I would move the district levy a tax of $14,166,429. For current operations, $7,945,100 for referendum approved debt, $403,259 for community services, for a total all-fund tax levy of $22,514,788.
I'll second that.
Okay, that motion brought by Dave and seconded by Rick is properly on the floor. Now, we could have folks discuss it.
So the tax levy proposed for this evening's budget does identify the reductions that were made in this upcoming school year based on the information we have in the state budget this time. For those that are following state budget information in July, the biennial budget for 23-25 included a $325 increase per pupil during both years of the budget. However, due to the complexity of the state funding formula and that for many years now, districts around the state have had declining enrollment as part of a previous state budget that provided zero increase to the per pupil amount, we find ourselves in an interesting situation. Some may look at the proposed state budget and think, well, we should be relying then on $325 multiplied by the student count for that year. That's not actually the case. The reason being is whenever you have declining enrollment, the fixed state funding formula issues you an exemption based on those that figure declining. When that happens, you receive an exemption for 1 year for that decrease. The following year, that amount is subtracted from your base. And if you refer to the annual meeting supplement on page 4, the items under line 7B and 10B, again, that's 7B.
On the cost, just pause for a moment, Harry's going to put it
Oh,
up
thank
so
you.
people in the audience can see it too.
All right, so again, the items on line 7B and 10B outline exemptions that are given on a 1-year basis. And the following year, we do not get to retain that funding within the funding formula. So if you take the simplified example of $325 times our student count, which is normally how revenue limits are calculated, we first have to go and subtract the previous year amount under line 7B, $351,675, and again in line 10B, $351,668 before we take any advantage of that $325 multiplied by the student count. For that reason, we weren't able to move our revenue limit in such a way that would really allow our general fund to increase significantly, which again is due in part to why the general fund expenses are decreasing and why the revenue limit did not increase as much as people may have thought. So the levies that are in place tonight show a decreased levy in our general fund, Fund 10, a decreased levy in our general fund, or our Fund 80, Community Service Fund, and a somewhat of an increase in our Fund 39 referendum debt service levy for planned defeasance as we did the previous year.
And one thing while we're on that, while this slide is up, I want to highlight that bottom right-hand corner is the change in maximum revenue limit for this current year compared to last year. And you can see that that's just a shade over $350,000, which is less than 1% of our overall revenue limit funds. So while the state did provide a bit of additional revenue for our school district, less than 1% in times when inflation has been, for part of this year at least, up to 8% and still remains very high. It puts us in a difficult situation for the decade referred to earlier.
I think that's a really important point, Ross. Can you just ballpark the difference between the perceived What if we would have got a 325 times enrollment with the actual? Do you have an idea?
I don't know, I think it's about $1.1 million, but it would have been were we not reproductions.
I think that's super important. The public might believe it's 1.1 million.
Right.
Actually.
And the revenue limit is our primary vehicle, which we can add revenue for the district. So to see this number go less than 1%, those are real constraints that we can't really maneuver outside.
The other thing that I want to add to that, and I think that Heather Moore, when she spoke to that in one of her questions, that because we had a referendum that didn't pass, we weren't able to access the full $11,000 per member revenue limit, unless something changes this fall with the legislature. And the legislature is looking at rescinding that act. I know Representative Scott Johnson is here in the audience today. He's one of our area representatives, and he's working on helping to solve that problem for our school district and other school districts across the state. That's something that if there is a change, we would hopefully have that news by the time the board sets the final levy on that October 23rd board meeting.
So on that motion, just to make it clear for the folks, and again, I'm new to this, so I was trying to understand it. This is the amount that the board can levy. It's not necessarily the amount that we will levy.
Correct. There will be requirements to change come fall based on our final Good Friday count. So at the bare minimum, these numbers would change slightly based on what the final pay distribution will be. One major part about setting the tax levy is we need to know what our final pay amount is going to be. And we won't have that information until October 15th.
Through the count and possible changes, so I understand. And I do understand that in this is, like you just said, is debt defeasance again.
Correct.
Knowing that we had a failed referendum, and I appreciate your comment where you said we can't keep trimming down to make your budget. Obviously, we just approved a, increase for our teachers and stuff, but we also have to recognize, to Ed's point, inflation is killing our taxpayers as well. So to push the debt defeasance, and again, this will be the conversation for October, when our taxpayers are already suffering under the weight of everything, when we know we're gonna need to go back to them to say, we need to run our school district. So it's just being mindful that defeasance, although the debt's not coming due until 2039, does save us money in the short term, but doesn't harm us in the long term when it comes to our relationship with the community.
And I think one thing worth pointing out that's kind of ancillary to this, but as I talk to people, we get a question what comes up in. We live in a state that has broad declining enrollment. I went to the DPI just to find enrollment long term. And as a state, in 2017, there was 860,000 students, and in the most recent year, 822,000. And so I am optimistic as I see the number of new homes going up within our district and families coming here. But I think it's important just that it's said publicly that experiencing a decrease in enrollment is more product of people having smaller families and waiting longer to start their families, and not something unique to us, but a demographic issue across the state. So with the item of the Ross talked about it when it came down to the $350,000 difference there, but as a symptom of our state, not a symptom of something specific to money.
Absolutely.
I think just to expand on that for a second, I think that not only is that true, that school districts across the state are seeing declining enrollment as families are smaller and people are waiting longer to have to start families. We've been able to weather that storm very well because we have had families moving into town. We really are a destination school district for our area, both from families moving in to our school district, but also from a pretty significant change in the last few years in open enrollment. We used to have a very large open enrollment deficit that has closed up every year over the last few years, to the point where last year it was almost break even, and we're anticipating that trend to continue to move in a positive direction for us.
I was just going to piggyback on Dave. I agree with everything you said, and we've done a great job and happy with the numbers. But sustainability is the thing that concerns me. And we talk about shrinkage that really comes with, there is a cost. It comes down into more work for our teachers, and it's harder for our students to get a good education. There's a cost. So I just, admire that problem, if that's a solution. But whenever we cut back, there is some of doesn't show up in the ledgers.
We know that for this current year's budget, we balanced this year's budget by a combination of reductions in people and opportunities for students, and with the use of our remaining one-time ESSER funds. And we know that the one-time ESSER funds won't be available a year from now for the 24-25 budget. And we know that fiscal cliff is going to be there. So we're going to have to make significant reductions for next school year if there aren't changes in our revenue for next fiscal year.
Anybody else comments on the motion?
I just share one more thing. I want to make sure folks are clear about the timeline. We talked about that October 23rd board meeting is when the board will set the final setting of the levy for this coming year. And Ross shared, and I don't know if everyone caught it, but the state comes out with that finalized information on enrollment and any potential legislative changes by October 15th. So it's a really short turnaround time from when we get that information from the state until we have that board meeting on the 23rd. So there'll be a busy week in our business office. We're already looking at how we want to structure getting that information and getting it out and ready for the board for that October 23rd, but that will be coming up in about a month and a half.
Okay, we have a motion and seconded on the floor, a motion that's been properly seconded on the floor. We've had discussion. If there's no further, I'm going to reread it because of its importance. It'll be on the, I think Carly can bring it back up top there for folks, and would remind and encourage you in the audience we're going to do a voice vote, and encourage you to participate. This is your motion, your action on behalf of the electorate of our school district. So the motion on the floor is to impose a district tax levy of $14,166,429 for current operations, $7,945,100 for referendum approved debt, and $403,259 for community services, for a total all-fund tax levy of $22,514,788. All in favor of that motion, please signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? I call that motion passed. Okay, thank you, Mr. McPherson. We will jump back to the agenda. We have completed D, which is levy a school tax. E is another statutory responsibility of the electorate, and it is to fix the salaries of board members and authorize expenses incurred in the performance of their duties. The proposed motion is on the board, and I would entertain that from anybody that would offer it.
I move to set salaries for board members at $2,000 and board presidents at $2,500 per year, to authorize the payment of actual necessary expenses incurred by board and education members while traveling and performance of duties. Second.
And I didn't catch the second. Two. Okay, that motion offered by Jeremy Goldhorn is seconded by Chris Tukendorf. And I will reread it. It's on the screen for those of you that Jeremy just enumerated. Is there any discussion on the motion? All that would be in favor of passage of that, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion clearly passes. And our other statutory obligation is to fix the manner in which we set the annual meeting. And that motion, or the proposed motion, is also up on the board, of which I would entertain if someone would bring it forward.
I'll make a motion to allow the Board of Education to establish the date and time for the 2024 annual meeting as provided under section State Statute 120.08.
Second.
Thank you, and I didn't catch the second. Sarah. Motion from Rick Mullen, seconded by Sarah Brechtel, to allow the board to establish the date and time for the 2024 annual meeting. Questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor of passage, please signify with aye. Aye. And opposed? I call that clearly passed. And that completes the tasks that we need to do as an electorate. And as such, I've exhausted my agenda.
I move with your.
Second.
Thank you. Rick's motion, seconded by Tracy to adjourn. And before you leave us, I would thank you all for coming. And as I mentioned at the start, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we will reconvene. I'll call to order a regular meeting of the school board. Oh, and thank you to Miss Sarah Stuckey. No. You know what you do, because you always bring us wonderful little goodies over here. So please avail yourself of the goodies that Sarah has left up here on the side of the meeting room. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming.